into our chat and coffee. Hopefully some of you've got coffee already lined up and a little bit more. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Marlene from Netanya. It's good to see you, Marlene.
Hi.
And we're going to start with Rabbi Black, who's going to give us his thought for the week. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Can I suggest you mute everybody?
Yes, we've got our technical director doing that.
Rabbi, you're muted.
You're muted, Rabbi.
Can't hear you, Rabbi.
Okay, can you all hear me now? Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay, good. Okay, lovely to see you all this morning. I'm glad that you can see me. And last week I spoke about the Aron, the Holy Ark, the Tzipita Oto Zahav Toho. This is what I said. You shall overlay it, this Aron should be, this Holy Ark should be overlaid with pure gold. Inside and outside, it should be overlaid. That's what we spoke about last week. I mentioned the dictum about the Talmud Chacham, a wise student of the Torah, that his internal life should be a reflection of how he or she comports his or herself externally. In other words, you have to be on the inside what you are on the outside. In other words, if you reflect yourself as a great person, therefore that's how you should be on the inside. That's what I mentioned about last week. Now, I'm going to begin my little talk today with a dictum from Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the fathers. He says like this, listen to this. This is from chapter 5. It says, Al tistakel b'kankan ela b'ma sheyesh bo. He says, do not look at the outside of the bottle, but at what it contains. The Mishnah is referring to bottles of wine. Sometimes you can look at the outside and it might be an old bottle, but the wine inside is new. And sometimes you can purchase a new bottle, but the wine inside is old. Older wine is more mature and valued. Younger wine is less valued. The appearance of the bottle is not always a way of knowing what's on the inside, whether or not you have purchased a superior quality of wine. And the message of the Mishnah is quite profound. Don't always look at the chitzoniyot. Don't look at the outside, because that might not be what is a true reflection of what is going on the inside, okay? Sort of like converse of what we spoke about last week. In English, we have a similar dictum. Don't judge a book by its cover. And I expect you can apply this idea to so many aspects in life. You go into a supermarket, you purchase your groceries. What makes you buy the product? Is it the packaging or what the product contains? Is it really good for you? Is it healthy? Or have you been taken in by the nifty advertising, marketing and packaging techniques? And we all do it. We are taken in by brand name products with the promise that somehow or other that particular brand is better, even though it might not be. Likewise, when we look and judge people, and we do judge people, whatever we say, when we see somebody, in fact, psychologists say that within 1.5 minutes, you normally judge somebody, a new person that you've never seen before. When we look and we judge people, are we looking at the chitzoniot? Are we looking at the outer layer, his or her look, what they are wearing, their demeanor, their hairstyle, their makeup, the way they come across, the color of their skin, God forbid, we should be looking at that. Or do we look deeper? The Mishnah is saying, look at the panimiot, look inside. Don't look at the outer packaging, but look to see, what does this person really stand for? Look at their character, their personality, their good deeds. That's what the Mishnah is saying. But all the above that I have just said seems to fly in the face of the Sedra this week. The Torah in Tzaver, and again it is repeated in Pikudei, all in all a total of 80 verses, and I'm talking about what it's speaking about, preoccupies itself with the Bigdei Kahuna, the special clothes worn by the Kohanim and the Kohen Gadol. Indeed, the Torah says that if the Kohen is lacking any of those garments, then Avodotah Pesula, his service becomes invalid. It's all on the outside. And on occasion, if the Kohen Gadol was lacking any of his Shmona Begadim, the penalty could be capital, which aggravates our question even more. How is it that the Torah is preoccupied with the outer appearance rather than the pinimiot, the inner essential aspect of who the Kohen Gadol really was and his connection to Hashem? And it flies in the face of that Mishnah that we just quoted. The Rav, Rabbi Yosef Dov Ber Soloveitchik, who compares the Kohanim with the Nevi'im. The Nevi'im are the prophets. Whereas the Torah goes into great detail about their appearance, nowhere in the Torah are we instructed that the Navi, the prophet, had to be dressed in a certain fashion. The only case I can think of is when Hashem appeared to Moshe at the burning bush and said to him the following, Shalna alecha ma'araglecha, remove your shoes from your feet, because the place under which you are standing is Admat Kodesh, is holy ground. But that is the exception. There is no dress code for the prophet, the Navi. But for the Kohen, it is really strict. Perhaps not today, but then it was. The distinction is in the roles of the Navi and the role of the Kohen. The Navi, the prophet, is bringing the message from Hashem, and that message in each situation was different depending on the circumstances. Israel had sinned by bowing down to idols, by turning their backs on Hashem. The Navi, the prophet like Jeremiah or Isaiah, is coming to give the message to Israel to repent, to turn back to Hashem. If not, Hashem would destroy the Mikdash. So in each situation, the message could be very different. So the clothes he wore reflects that chidush in the message. However, the Kohanim have a different role. Their mission is to do the daily service, which is representing tradition, doing the same avodah every day, every week, every season, every year. The service, therefore, was reflected through the clothes of the Kohanim. Imagine you were a Kohen living in the times of the first or the second temple. The clothes, the service that you did was very much the same as what your great grandfather was doing. The clothes, therefore, of the Kohanim are a reflection of that permanence, of that tradition, of that consistency in service to Hashem. Perhaps we understand on a deeper level why Hasidim or Haredi Jews like to dress in clothes perhaps more suited to 18th century jewelry. The message to orthodoxy, therefore, today is to be like the Navi, to look forward, to try out new ideas, and that is important. But then again, with the Kohen, looking back at tradition, reflected by Bigdei Kahuna. It's lovely to see you all, and I wish you a good morning, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for your words of wisdom, Rabbi Black. We've got something to think about today. Well, now it's my very great pleasure to hand over to Howard Grossman, who is going to be reviewing the news this morning. Welcome to Howard. Howard, you need to unmute yourself, please. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's been quite a week of news, what with Boris against Sir Keir Starmer and the Winter Olympics. Starting with Boris, but I did see a very interesting snippet in a paper last week sometime that his wife, Carrie, she's putting forward a case for the soldiers outside Buckingham Palace or anywhere not to be wearing bearskins anymore because she's an animal protector, and that makes a little bit of interesting reading there. But then they've got these bearskins all around the world. Does that mean she's going to start doing it all around the world? That was that sort of struck me as being a little bit interesting, but why should she be getting involved so much? There's saying that she's ruling Boris. She's giving him lots of things to possibly she run the country. That's what they're virtually saying in certain parts of the press. The other bit of news that came out yesterday, I think it was a TV snippet about Brent Cross Flyover is most likely going to be closed for some considerable time because it's structurally unsound now. It's 60 years old apparently, and it's got serious problems. I think it said it had 175,000 vehicles a day going over it, and it's now, they showed the close-ups of the structure where it's breaking away. So that's going to create havoc in northwest London, I would think, quite considerably, if it does go ahead and they have to close it and do repairs. The other interesting thing that I noticed was a whole page spread in one of the tabloids about Dame Maureen Lipman saying that Dame Helen Mirren shouldn't be playing the part of Gold in My Ear because she's not Jewish, which I found that very strange. And Dame Helen Mirren came back stating, well, she shouldn't be playing, she's from Essex, should she be playing a Newcastle char lady because she doesn't come from Newcastle. There's interesting, but there's a whole page spread in one of the nationals, which seems quite surprising. Then the other piece of news that didn't get reported on, I saw a clip, I think it was on ITV, I think most of you have seen it, about, I think it's two Chassidim or two from men getting beaten up outside their shop as they were locking up their shop. They were really heavily beaten about, but that didn't get reported on. I didn't see it in any in the nationals, not that I buy every national paper, but it didn't get reported by the BBC as far as I'm aware. It may have been done a day or so afterwards, but that was sort of quite, I don't know if it's significant that the BBC, but the BBC seem to be, are they anti-Semitic or not? I don't know. I couldn't say, but I think everybody has their own feelings about the BBC at the moment. Then there was the waste of money that the government spent. This was like 13, I think it came to about £13 billion on the wasted PPE equipment that they've been purchasing from all around the world, not up to specification. I mean, I did read also somewhere, which surprised me, that a lot of the face masks had to be rejected because they weren't tested on women, they're only tested on men. I don't see how they can reject it through that. I mean, somebody may be able to answer that question for me, but that also struck me as being strange. Then they were sending out flights to various countries at great expense and coming back, and they were rejected straight away. I don't know what sort of quality control is going on. If the government is spending sort of billions or millions on face masks, surely they have somebody from their ministries going out there to check these items. I mean, I used to be in a manufacturing company, not on clothing or anything, but it was heavy industrial machinery. We wouldn't release anything unless it was gone through a complete rigorous test, and we would reject them. I rejected stuff in America that was being made for us and everything, but I just don't understand. Yeah, okay, Boris did a good job, I suppose, getting all vaccinated fairly quickly, but the waste of money on some of this PPE stuff, it's just abhorrent. You know, it was £13 billion. They could have built like 8 or 9 new hospitals. So that's my review of the papers. The other thing that made the news yesterday, I think, was this West Ham football player kicking his cat to pieces. Apparently, I didn't see the newsreel, so I don't know. I can't comment on it. But I know there's a whole uproar today about why should they have picked it to play football yesterday. But that's besides the point. But I mean, how can somebody do that? I mean, that was horrendous. So that's it as far as I'm concerned. They're the major items. The other question is about now we could be having Queen Camilla. There's suddenly been a turnaround there. Everybody was sort of against her 5 or 6 years ago, I suppose, but now she's come out shining by the looks of things. She made the news yesterday, I noticed. She was at a home or children's home or something somewhere, and she seems to be warming to the public, put it that way, I suppose. So times change.
Howard,
Yes,
do you think Carrie Johnson will be Prime Minister Consort?
possibly. It's a possibility. I mean, she's got obviously got a lot of sway somewhere.
She seems to have a lot of influence over
Yes,
him.
yeah, influence. Yes,
I wonder if she's the power behind all the parties.
possibly.
She's the wine carrier.
Yeah.
She made a credit card bill for the wine at Tesco.
I mean, it's a bit crazy. This, it's. I mean, I'm actually fed up reading about it now because it's just taken up the news. Well, I suppose no news is good news, as they say, but it's just been the forefront of the news for the last 10, 12 days. It's been non-stop.
The next thing that make the transport minister a full consort.
Yeah. Yes.
Also, you spoke about the money wasted on PPE. If
Yes.
you remember, at the very beginning, a private aircraft was hired to go to Turkey.
That's right. Yes.
All the PPE
Yeah.
without even checking it. But
Yeah.
they paid for it in advance.
I know.
Buys goods pays for goods without even seeing them.
That's what I suppose. It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yes, it was actually subcontracted, I think, and the
Yeah.
company that manufactured them apparently hadn't done them before, I think. So it was terrible, really, terrible waste.
And the amazing thing is, a lot of this stuff was manufactured by. There's one here. Miami jewelers' gowns had to be suspended. The use of 10 million gowns imported via Miami-based jewelry designer Michael Sager was suspended because officials put the wrong packaging specification on the contract. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, some of these very tiny companies are making fortunes, but where do they find these small companies from? Or did they just jump on the bandwagon and put themselves forward? Oh, we can supply all this PPE equipment. Yeah, I've got it here on that wasted flight. There's an RAF flight was sent to pick up a shipment of 400,000 Turkish gowns supplied by Selinger, which turned out to be useless.
You'll probably find that most of the small companies used were mashpucha of the government ministers.
I'm sure. I totally agree with you. They're all in the know. I mean, how can Baroness Bra, whatever her name is, she was instrumental in 203 million pounds worth of PPE equipment. How could she win it? What did she know about producing PPE equipment?
Yes. Also, Matt Hancock, I think his sister runs a company with her husband. So that was, I think that's going to eventually come out when they have an inquiry. But
yeah, but also Hancock himself is a shareholder.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that was it. Yes, it's all underhand.
Yeah.
Which is dreadful, really, because the public, us, if you like, are getting denied national health services because of this wasted money. Oh, shoot, just a second, because I forgot to tell my daughter I'm on a Zoom meeting today. I told them yesterday not to phone me yesterday. Now they phone me today. Left the ring.
No point in telling her not to phone you yesterday.
I like that.
Yeah, Howard mentioned about the Hasidim getting beaten up.
It was on the BBC.
And it was shown on the ITV local news.
Yes, it was. I think it appeared in the Mail as well, actually.
It did go on the BBC website.
Yes.
I recorded the BBC local news on the same evening, and they didn't think it important enough.
It was quite big news here in Israel.
Oh, was it?
actually.
Okay.
Yes. It was It was in the Jerusalem Post, and
BBC,
it was picked up here. It's good to see that it's not only in Israel that the politicians have one rule for themselves, and they don't keep to the rules. We had the same thing here with Netanyahu and Rivlin celebrating Pesach with their families when we were all sitting on our own. And you've had Johnson, having parties and things when you're all in lockdown. It's exactly the same, the politicians everywhere.
Yeah, but the BBC are not politicians, they're paid for by the taxpayer. The licence payer, I mean. They're not politicians, they should be neutral.
How embarrassing.
Another gross profit oil company. I'd like to know where they're
Why? No, I'm saying because it embarrasses Jewish people to do it.
You're not unmuted. You're not.
And I wanted to comment on something actually.
Yes, go ahead.
There's a 2-page spread in the Mail today.
Yes.
With a headline, "My husband gambled away £15 million," and it's that Freddie David from Boreham Wood.
Oh yes.
Who stole money from the shul, he sent to prison, but his wife has done a 2-page spread in the Mail today.
Oh my goodness me.
Which really is not on.
That's awful.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of points fingers, doesn't it?
It's terrible. Yeah, that's the trouble. It's so embarrassing, really, when the member of the community.
Exactly.
He was in the community, but they didn't say the Jewish community. They didn't refer to that at all in the whole article.
I haven't read it fully yet, but even so, we all, a lot of people will know.
Yes, of course.
Then he shouldn't have done it, should he?
No, of course not. Absolutely.
Because they're entitled to report on it, especially as Hannah is now made an association with someone in the Labour Party, actually, to try and protect other families from the same kind of thing that she was unaware of.
Yes.
Right.
Both because they were on one of the JNF rallies,
I see.
many of them, and her husband came on some of them.
Yes.
Oh really? Yeah.
Yeah, I just found that page now. I'm not reading it now, but yes, just.
Oh, they haven't turned it against the Jewish community, fortunately.
Okay.
What actually makes a change? What's that about?
He was a gambler running a Ponzi scheme, and he defrauded a lot of his investors. And half is 4 years in prison, and his wife didn't know what was going on, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it was.
And Rabbi Znaimer got out just in time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yes, he was.
The victims were all pensioners. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and money from the shul as well. I think he embezzled, didn't he?
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah.
It was only 15 million. I don't know what all the fuss is about, really.
It doesn't even get you a PPE contract. Yeah, I know.
Yes, that's right.
Your pension, you'd know what the fuss was about. Yeah.
Yes. Howard, thank you very much for giving us a heads up about the Brent Cross.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, in the same way, some years ago, the flyover on the M4 at Brentford, they were actually, to describe it in a better way, injecting the pillars with concrete. So they did quite a lot of work there for about a couple of years, so they didn't have to close it. So maybe we might do the same.
To think what's going to happen with Spaghetti Junction one day when a system like that needs renewing it. It'll be chaos.
Well, I do remember in 1975, when it was about 15 years old, they did a lot of work at Brent Cross because we had to go that way to work from Golders Green to Ealing, and it was closed for over a year. It was a nightmare. So this is going to be much worse after.
I think that closed it then.
Yeah, it's going to be awful.
How will you get to Brent Cross?
But I think getting there is all right for us. It's the flyover on North Circular.
Going over from Hendon that way, I think. If you're coming down from Hendon, say the Boroughs, and going to the west, want to go towards.
Yes, got to go around the
Finchley Road.
Around the yes.
Go to Hendon and go that way, but it's awful.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but it was on the London news last night, I noticed.
Was it?
So when's it going to start?
You haven't seen, I'm just flipping through the paper now, see if it's mentioned in the newspaper.
It'll be the Easter weekend.
Yeah, most of it.
Thanks, Lee.
I wonder how many bodies I find.
Yeah. So, well, also, of course, because it's a connection to the M1 as well. So
Yes. Oh, it's the feeder road for quite a lot of roads as well.
I was talking to somebody who works in John Lewis, and they were saying that the building, the actual Brent Cross shopping centre, is in such bad repair. The ceiling, the roofing is bad, and it's really in a bad way, some of it.
It's old now, isn't it? It's 50, 60 years old.
But it looks very nice inside at the moment.
Yeah.
Inside.
Have you been on the roof though?
No, I haven't.
yeah.
Inside, they've got all these pictures about when it opened. So if you remember when it opened in 76, all the cars that we had then, the pictures.
That's when I went to, I worked there then when it opened.
Where did you work?
I worked in John Lewis for 9.5 years. From just after it opened. Yeah. So they were good in those days.
I remember when they were building that, they lifted the span.
I remember when it was being built.
And it crashed down onto a coach. It killed quite a number of people on the North Circular Road. They were doing the structural work while the traffic was still flowing on the North Circular underneath it. And the big girder or something came out of the crane and crushed the coach. That I do remember. But
remember when it was a dog track there?
Oh yes, the stadium.
Hendon Stadium, Hendon Greyhound Stadium, wasn't it?
Greyhound Stadium, yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Howard.
Okay.
For your reflections on the news, and thank you for your insights, and been very interesting to engage us this morning.
Okay, fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Howard. Well done.
Yeah, at least I've got the head. I was tuning in yesterday. I thought I had a mental block, and I thought it was yesterday, so I couldn't get in. And I thought I looked at the flyer again. I thought, oh my goodness me, it was the 8th, not the 9th, not the 8th.
But that didn't make the news, though.
No, it didn't. No. Well, you knew about it. I spoke to you yesterday. Anyway.
Thank you very much, Howard.
Okay, right. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Well, now it's my very great pleasure to be in conversation with Robert Brody. And as regards Robert, I think we draw great strength in our Villa when we have the pleasure of hearing you in shul. And of course, during lockdown, when we were all davening ourselves at home, we did miss hearing your voice. It's been a great pleasure to hear you back in shul, and also for your Kabbalat Shabbat as well. And what's intrigued me, and I'm sure will intrigue everybody else, how you started singing, and whether you obviously were very talented as a youngster.
Well, my memory of taking services was that the were at the Heathfield Park Shul youth services, where I got pulled in there and taken. Now, who's not muted? Someone's not muted. Yes, so that's where I started, I think, and people encouraged me to carry on. And as time went by, I often took services in the main shul, and then sometimes in other shuls as well, where people asked me to come to sing. Then at the age of 18, I went to Birmingham University to study dentistry. So that was, I was out of circulation then in Willesden. And I didn't get much opportunity in Birmingham to take services, although at the Central Synagogue I acted as, led the services sometimes.
Yeah. Now, I think your role model was actually your father, Sholem, wasn't it?
It was indeed. I never did any formal training in taking synagogue services or as a chazan. I don't regard myself as a chazan, really. I just enjoy taking services, and I'm pleased that people seem to enjoy me taking services for them too. But I think I'm not a chazan, and thinking of myself as a chazan really demeans the role of a chazan, who the role is a very, very significant and important role in the community. We were gifted for many years with a succession of chazanim, and I think the kind of services that was established in those days is sorely missed, and I miss it. It's such an important role. In fact, in the Shulchan Aruch it says, Kenton exempted, of course, but if a community can only afford one minister, it should be a chazan, not the rabbi. But that's another argument, another discussion. And fortunately, in Kenton, we're gifted to have Rabbi Black with us, who also comes from a generation of chazanim. His father was a chazan. He knows his nusach, he loves his nusach, and he's a great Baal Tefillah. So Kenton is exempted from that rule, I think.
Yes. Now, starting off with your background, because I understand that your father was actually involved during the war, wasn't he, in Rickmansworth and Chorley Wood?
That's right.
Interesting.
He was the family then was evacuated to Rickmansworth. My older brother was alive then, and I was actually born in Rickmansworth on a Shabbos morning.
Oh.
Dad came home.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Dad came home from shul to a surprise. But he had trained as a chazan. He was at a yeshiva, and he was had a most beautiful handwriting. I'm going to show you here some of his manuscript. Let me see if I can put it here.
Oh.
I don't know if it's, yes, I think it's reversed, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
beautiful.
Beautiful handwriting and musical script as well. It's quite difficult to actually read that kind of manuscript because the music reads from left to right, and each Hebrew syllable that's put below the appropriate notes is written the other way round. So it's quite a technique to learn to read the Hebrew at the same time as reading the music. But he was really an expert in chazanut. His father as well, my Zayda, alav shalom, was also a chazan. They used to take services together, and he instructed me in the nuschot. I've actually got cassette tapes that he recorded for me, and that's where my training came from. So I owe it to him.
Yeah, because a lot of it, of course, the Hasanot is improvised as well, isn't it? And although this is written down, a lot of it isn't actually. Is that right?
Well, it is written. Some people have actually written down in music their variations. It's very difficult to read it. Yeah. I think it's important to understand the basic nusach, and then you can augment it and improvise around it. But it's quite difficult sometimes if you improvise without discipline to come back to the right nusach, and it's quite tricky to do that. And there are one or two key phrases of the nusach that you have to have in your mind. So if you do get musically lost, you can remember that and bring yourself back into the right mood and mode.
Yeah, it's a bit like improvising when you're doing jazz. Actually, you've got what you call the head, the sort of set thing, and then you go off the tangent. Then you've got to try and come back to it.
And there's artistry in some of the great chazonim, Yosef Malevani and Naftali Hershdik, that they know exactly where they are. They are musicians besides being chazanim. And when they improvise, they know exactly what they're doing. They know what key they're in, what augmentation they're using. So there is more to it in a skilled chazan than meets the ear.
Yes, I understand that. So growing up in Wilson must be very interesting because there was such large community and so many different shuls that you were able to attend.
It was huge. Near us we had the Old Shem, which was the smallish synagogue, but then there was Bronsbury Park in Bronsbury, Heathfield Park, which was a huge shul. I can't imagine that they used to have to put extra chairs in the corridors and use Grosvenor rooms and other places too as overflow services for the Yomim Noraim. And even on a Shabbat, the shul would be fairly full. Warm Lane, of course, very well-established community. So there's Warm Lane, Heathfield Park and Bronsbury were the three main United synagogues in the area. And there was also the Stiebel in Gabriel's Road, and there was lots going on. B'nai Akiva, the Bayit, was in Willesden Lane. It was a very big community. like Kenton was.
Yeah, I can understand that. And there was a lot of activities for, people of all ages and members, children as well.
Well, the Cheder was very big. I remember my dad, Olashon, was the headmaster of the Cheder at Teafield Park. So there was quite a thriving young community. There was, of course, like Kempton in its day, we had children's services, more than one, youth service, which was very, very strong and active. And a lot of people graduated from the youth service to be acting as taking the services.
Yeah.
So it was a lot.
Yeah. And you went to school locally, didn't you?
Well, yes. To start with, my infant school was Oel Shem, Hillel House, really, which was in the Oel Shem Shul building. Then I went to the Chamberlain Road School up till the age of 11, 8 to 11. And then I moved down to Kensal Rise School, which was also on Chamberlain Road. And the headmaster there was, he was, I thought of him as an old man, but he must have been in his 30s. And he was very friendly with my father. And the two of them used to liaise about the times of Shabbat on Friday and the Yom Tovim. And the headmaster was always very cooperative. And a few of us, Jackie Fagenblum was in my class, so Morris's brother, who died very young, unfortunately. But we had quite a few Jewish children there. Friday afternoon we used to leave early, and all the Yom Tovim too. And actually, when Linda got her first job as a teacher in Ruislip, he, the headmaster at Kensal Rise, was her headmaster at her school in Ruislip. So we kept in touch with the family, and it was lovely to have that reunion.
That was lovely. That was really quite unusual, really.
It was a coincidence.
Yes, and then you went to secondary school.
Yeah, I went to Quintin Grammar, which it was a grammar school, and there was actually an interview for admission, and it was based in the Regent Street Polytechnic. The annex was in the middle of Soho, so my first 2 years, from 11 to 13, were sent in Soho, and it was quite a friendly place. There were lots of young ladies by the, waiting around to greet us on our way. We were a couple of 100 yards from the Windmill Theatre, but I'm afraid it was somewhat wasted on the young Robert Brody. The school later went on to Finchley Road. It moved away from the Regent Street Poly, and we went to Finchley Road, and it was in this joint attached building with Kinderton, which was a secondary modern, and I believe the two schools now have become one. And
what decided you that you wanted to do dentistry as a profession? What sort of you'd met, or?
Well, I think it was my father who suggested it to me, but I was very happy with a suggestion. I have always been interested in medical things. My father was too. He would have loved to have been a doctor, but the circumstances of his youth, it just wasn't on the horizon, wasn't a possibility. But he was always interested in medicine, so he ended up being a shochet. I'm not sure that's a very close comparison. That's what happened. And I've also always been very practical and good at handiwork. So I moved my carpentry into the oral sphere, and that's how it ended. But it was actually turned out to be a great profession for me. I loved the business aspects of it, the management of it, and I loved seeing the patients and interacting with them. And I retired a couple of years ago from dentistry when COVID kicked in, and I knew we'd be closed for 6 months, and then it wouldn't be the same. But some of the patients were from, I started my practice in about 1970, and some of the patients there were still with me at the time I packed up, and are still in touch.
Well, that's remarkable, actually. That's the thing.
It was
what a good dentist you are.
Well, or how discerning the patients are. I was a devil they knew.
Yeah, but it's very interesting, because you've done, as it were, parallel professions. Because not only have you been a singer, but you've also been doing dentistry at the same time. So It's
Well,
a nice combination.
dentistry, of course, was the main profession, but ever since the children were babies, I think I always took an afternoon off a week so that I could be with them and do what, we went out and made activities. But it also was a good profession because although it's a very responsible profession, you can control it with an appointment book. Other professions, I mean, solicitors, for example, if they're dealing with a case, they can't say, well, I can't help you, I'm 6 o'clock now, or I'm going away next weekend, or whatever they wanted. So it was really very malleable, and there's a lot going for it. I don't know about it as a profession today. Things have changed quite greatly from the management of dentistry point of view, but as far as I was concerned, it gave me a good income, it gave me the freedom to pursue other interests, and I was very lucky to be in the position that I found myself in.
So when you actually started work as a dentist, I understand that you could have actually become an architect as well. I was very impressed with the fact
I've always been in archaeology, and maybe that's why I asked the question about what the hell they're going to do with Spaghetti Junction.
That's right.
Rebuilding, because these concrete structures have a lifetime, and it's interesting to see that Brent, I remember that being built, or I remember the dog, the Greyhound track there, and the telephone boxes there, the red telephone boxes along that junction, and the North Circular Road as it was then. I've always had an interest in architecture. We go on holidays sometimes, and I say to Linda, "Do you see that gutter up there? How is it supported?" She's not keen, but I don't know if I could have been an architect. One of my co-students was studying architecture, and it was, at the time, far too technical from what I could see of it. So it's of interest.
But Robert,
you mentioned about your extension that you did, your first practice, wasn't it?
Well, yes, I had a practice on Kenton Road, which was half of a semi-detached house. When I bought that house, I did the conversion plan to make the upstairs a separate flat. So we occupied the whole ground floor of 607 Kenton Road until I went there one Sunday morning, and we had expanded to fill the place. And I was speaking to the neighbour of the other half of the semi, who was a widow, and she said she was fed up and she wanted to move away. So I went home for lunch and I told Linda, okay, I bought a house this morning. And that was the beginning of quite a long episode, because Brent had a standing rule not to allow the loss of any accommodation premises. Brent included a lot of areas that were highly overpopulated, and they would not allow me to join the buildings and make the ground floor a dental practice. The only way I eventually got to it, which took a couple of years while I was paying a mortgage interest those days of 15%, was that it's a corner premises, and there was a space between the garage and the main house that I measured it all up, and I found that if I filled in that area and made it into an open plan living room and kitchen, it would be foot for foot the area of the ground floor of the house that I wanted to appropriate for dental use. And that was the compromise in the end. And then the dental practice expanded across the ground floor of both houses. And that was a fairly intricate planning exercise to get them to link together. The other planning thing that I enjoyed greatly was my practice in Nottingham Place was on the back of a building on the Mews side of it. The front of the building was 4 stories high and the back was 2, and there was a space above my surgery which had a flat roof. And over the years I was toying with the idea, wouldn't it be nice if there was a flat on the flat roof? And eventually I did draw up all the plans for that and got it approved by Westminster. It's a long story, but it was fascinating at the time, and we ended up putting another flat on the top, but the building's been sold now. It was an interest rather than anything other than that for me.
Well, actually, I must say, very impressive to get it passed by the council.
It wasn't easy. bit of toing and throwing.
Yeah. So early on, of course, you sang as soloist with choirs, and then you also sang choirs as well. And early on, I think you became a member of the Semmel Choir. I think you had to audition first before you joined the choir.
Yes. In 1961 was when I went to Birmingham to start my course. And while it was still not settled where I was going, I went to an audition with the Semmel Choir, and Dudley Cohen auditioned me. And then things happened very quickly. And a couple of weeks later, I was actually moved to Birmingham Hillel House. In Birmingham, they had a parallel choir called the Zimriah, and the conductor was Ellis Short. And the Sunday that I arrived in Birmingham, he was actually re-auditioning everyone in the choir with the help of Dudley Cohen, who had come up to Birmingham to help him. And so there I had my second audition, and I got into the Zimriah choir, where I sang with them for about 5 years while I was at the course there. Ellis also conducted the Birmingham University Choir, and I sang with them too.
But since then, of course, you've been connected with very many choirs, including all over the world, and I think particularly in Romania as well. And,
well, yeah, it's
Israel.
I've really been lucky that there are three activities that I've been involved with that have expanded the possibilities, and singing is one. With the Semmel, we've toured extensively in America and Europe and Russia, St. Petersburg, and it's given us great opportunities to travel around, and I've often ended up conducting services en route. The last time was in St. Petersburg at the great choral synagogue. That was an interesting experience. I mean, it was Shabbos Mevorachim when I was there. It's an absolutely huge building, and the choir gallery is way up high. You almost need to take an air sickness pill to go up there. It was Shabbos Mevorachim, so I said to the people running the shul, I think they're Lubavitchers, I'd like to do benching Birchat HaChodesh, and what does the choir know? And he said, well, the choir doesn't know much, don't worry about the choir. And I said, listen, it's a great opportunity for me and to do something there. And so I went up to the choir, I went up to the ladies' gallery, and the shul had been redecorated. It was really quite neat and tidy. And then there was a spiral iron staircase up to the choir loft. And I got up to this choir loft, which was also a pretty big room, and there's a trestle table there with beer cans and ashtrays, and all the choir of the great choral synagogue, they're all going from the local opera, great singers, but they didn't know many of the traditional chazanut, but boy, did they do a nice Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo.
And you also have done some work, haven't you, for the BBC, because you recorded some music for Theresienstadt, didn't you?
Yes, Geraldine Arbach of the Jewish Music Institute was approached by the BBC because they were running a program, or producing a program on the music for Theresienstadt. It's a very interesting subject because all the intelligentsia and the musicians from Prague especially ended up in Theresienstadt, and it suited the Germans to let the Jews have concerts and an educational system there, because they used it as a publicity stunt, and they absolutely convinced the Red Cross that it was a holiday camp, and it was really turned against the idea. And there were a lot of composers there, and they had written a lot of music. And there was a cantorial piece that they particularly wanted to include in the program. They'd found a room which was about 12 foot square, which was used as a storeroom. It was in the back of a ground floor yard. And on the plasterwork of this little room, there was artwork and Hebrew writing, which showed that it had been used as a Beit Knesset. And they had a piece of music that had been written for string, well, they arranged it for string quartet, and it was V'Yerushalayim Rachamim Tashuv. to Jerusalem, your city, in your mercy, return us, which was an amazing piece of one of the tefillot to be composed in those circumstances. And so Gerald, I think the chazan they were going to use had let them down or was not available. And so Geraldine suggested it to me. And I remember quite clearly, they phoned me up, I think on a Thursday, and the next Tuesday I was on a BA flight at 6:30 in the morning, and I kept that return ticket very close to my heart because not many people had gone to Theresienstadt with a return ticket in their possession. And it was a long day, but fascinating, and it was a lovely experience.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And you're also very active, aren't you, in the European Councils Association, because you want to keep the art of Hazanut alive, as it were. Yeah,
the ECA are trying hard to keep it going. And we were at a conference in Hanover, just actually before COVID lockdown, a couple of years ago. And the next one is going to be in Istanbul at the end of this year, November, I think, this year. And I just hope that it will succeed.
Yes, it'd be wonderful if it does, yeah.
It's a big international event. They have Asher Hainovitz was there, Malavani's been there, Naftali Hershtik, and there are actually a lot of young chazanim being trained for the full role as a chazan, not just taking the services like I do.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Now, one of your hobbies is actually classic convertibles. So, would you like to chat to us a little bit more information? You started that early on, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I always liked convertible cars, and when I got back from university, I traded in my Vauxhall Viva and bought a Hillman Superminx convertible.
Yeah.
And that lasted for a while. And then we had a Vitesse convertible, Triumph Vitesse convertible. In fact, we went on a honeymoon in that car.
Oh, lovely.
And we did get back, we limped back in the car.
Yes.
The first of many times that we limped back from places.
I can imagine, yes.
And then in 1971, I bought a Ford Corsair Crayford convertible. It's now a collector's item, and I've had it since 1971. Then about 10 years later, I wanted to get something which was a little bit bigger. The family was growing, and there was a conversion that some people did on the Jaguar Coupe, the Jaguar 4.2 litre car with a two-door version. And there were a couple of firms that did some work of strengthening the body, cutting off the roof and putting on a hood, and I rather fancied that. And I saw one eventually in Exchange and Mart that really looked like it would fit the bill, and I phoned up the fellow who was advertising it, and I said, I'd like to come and see it. Where are you? And he said, Scunthorpe. So that was a bit of a deadener. However, it was a Thursday that Exchange and Mart came out, and the same day I actually took a train up to Scunthorpe. I didn't want to lose this. I'd been looking for about 6 months for one of these cars to become available. And when I got up to see the car, he collected me from the station in another car, and I thought, well, why is that? And I got to his builder's yard where he was constructing the car, and he had 3 engineers crawling all over it because there was an oil leak, the carburetor was flooding, and some of the other things were wrong with it. But we got those patched up there and then. And I made him an offer. In those days, I gave him a check and drove the car home.
Oh,
anybody?
That's an achievement.
No, didn't have a map or anything. But it was just up the A1. So once I got on the A1, I knew I'd be fairly safe. And anyway, that's since 1981. And the car at the moment is in the workshop having a new hood put on it. But that's been with me since those years. And at the time of the JNF was very adventurous with the projects they were running.
Yes.
Simon Winters and Gail Seal, I think they were the instigators of doing fundraising rallies for JNF worldwide, not just UK. And 4 times we've taken the Jaguar to Jerusalem. We've driven through Europe, through Eastern Europe, through Spain and southern France, and then Italy down to the south of Italy, where they've taken car ferries. And they've had to ship the cars for the last part of the journey from Europe to Israel. Now, the first year there was a passenger ferry service, a regular one, from Athens to Haifa, and we all went on that and travelled in fairly comfortable conditions. It had to be on a Thursday, I think, and we'd travel overnight, so we had to be in Haifa on the Friday. There was no flexibility with the days. The next time that ferry didn't survive, it didn't keep running, so the cars had to go on a cargo ferry, and apparently that was absolutely a filthy boat, and we had RAC people with us, and 2 of them were supposed to go on it. One of them had a look at his cabin. I'm not going on that. Anyway, it happened, and we flew from Athens in the middle of the night. At the other times, they put the cars on a cargo plane. El Al had a cargo plane, which picked us up from Istanbul. And that was exciting too, because 2 days before we were scheduled to go, there was a fire in the cargo department of Istanbul airport. Fortunately, there's another airport just the other side of a very long bridge. Istanbul is the border between Europe and India, or Asia, not Asia, the Middle East. And it was hugely difficult for El Al to manage to transfer the flight from the main airport to the side one. And we had to drive there, I think it was on a Friday, and the traffic to get onto that bridge goes from 10 lanes down to about 3 lanes. So it was a huge traffic jam. We were supposed to have fairly empty tanks to go on the plane to be flown. And so we were all queuing in this hot weather, trying to get into the airport, running out of petrol, worried about running out of petrol. But it was exciting, but it happened, and we're here to tell the tale.
Yeah, that's quite remarkable, really. But you also understand that you did a bodybuilding course to build it.
Yes, it was with the Corsair.
Car painting as well. That's quite adventurous.
Winston College of Technology in Neasden at that time had a course on classic car repairs, and the Corsair needed some panel work at the bottom of the panels, wheel arches and the lower parts that were rusting. And so I went on this course. I remember it was led by a lovely Rastafarian fellow, and we cut out the bits that were rusted and treated what was left, and then we had to cut out patterns of sheet metal. We made a cardboard pattern first, then cut it out of the metal, and then we had to bend it and shape it, and then weld it on, so I became a nice MIG welder. And anyway, it was great fun. I enjoyed doing that. And it's now being done again. It was about 25 years ago, but this time it's in a workshop being done.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so somebody else taking it over to do it. Yes. Well, of course, I know that Linda and yourselves are committed Zionists, but prior to the Kenton for Israel, when that was set up, you were for over 40 years actually on the committee for the show. Yes.
Kenton Zionist Society was led by Izzy Shane, Zichrono Livracha. He was quite a personality, and Izzy Sabielak. It was a good team, George Valken, and we had some big meetings. It was quite an important society then, and we had MPs coming and some very interesting and significant meetings that we used to arrange. Izzy passed away, and it didn't continue in the grand way that it had, and eventually closed down.
Yes, I see. Yeah, but you had quite a lot of talks actually in organised events as well, didn't you?
Indeed, yes. It was a regular and a significant point in Kenton.
Kenton, yeah, major part. And so, for my final question to you this morning is: do you have a guilty secret?
Well, I've thought really hard about this, and I don't know whether I should be pleased or not to say that I don't. So if people have been waiting for the last however long I've been hearing them to get this great denouement of my hidden secret, unless Linda wants to contribute one.
Okay, they're going to be
Showing the Zoom uniform where I got a nice shirt and top on and my pyjama trousers, but I haven't even. I'm terribly sorry. I know it's
right.
Yeah, and I can see an empty seat on his screen, so yeah, he might.
I see. Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much, Robert. It's been a real great pleasure to be in conversation with this morning, and we've learned quite a lot. That you're actually a secret architect, and you do so much handiwork as well. I mean, to be able to build, you know, parts of the car, I think it's quite remarkable, actually.
Well, it has been. Thank you so much for sharing.
Really much enjoyed it. Thank you also, of course, to Rabbi Black, and of course our reviewer of the news, Howard Grossman, and thank you too to our technical director, Morris. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again all next week, when our reviewer of the news will be Lee, and I'm looking forward to being in conversation with Roy next week. Thank you very much indeed. Take care, everybody.